I was surprised when I found probably close to 50 newspaper articles for this bottle. The problem was trying to narrow them down to what I needed. That's what I love about bottle collecting, though. I mean, you never know what kind of stories you're going to stumble on. So let's get to it on this episode of Antique Bottle Stories. Our story is about Frederick B. Michael, who was born in 1877 in Connecticut. He died in 1915. That would make him 38. So the first thing that stuck out at me was how young he was. So I went to the newspapers, and this was the first headline that I saw. I went, oh no. Michael drowned in an old marsh. Fred B. Michael lost his life in the old marsh while fishing with his brother George and a friend named Henry Roberge this afternoon. The three men started from the lower end of the lake and gone to a point about 1.5 miles from the dam where they were fishing. It says, for some reason, Fred jumped in the water and his brother George jumped in after him. Fred began to swim for the shore, which was about 30 feet away. When he was about 20 feet away, he went down for the second time. His brother went to his aid, but it says he could not aid him, as Fred kept trying to reach the shore. He finally sank while his brother and friend were trying to get the boat righted so that they could follow him. He sank in about 10 feet of water. He had a heavy pair of hunting boots, which undoubtedly caused him to be unable to use his legs for good advantage, for he was a good swimmer. The body was recovered. He was a well-known fisherman and huntsman. It says he was associated with his father in the management of the commercial house years ago, and as of late he had been managing the city lunch at the north side. Now, does that story come off as weird to anybody else? He's a good swimmer. First, why did he leave his boots on if he wanted to jump in? And if he noticed that his boots were causing him to sink, why didn't he just take them off? If he was a good swimmer, he should have been able to take them off. Why did his brother jump in and try to help him, but couldn't? It sounds like he didn't make it more than 10 feet away from him. Why didn't they just pull the boat up to him and just pull him back on board? Why did it say that they were trying to follow him in the boat? If he was having that much trouble and needed assistance, how come it sounds like he says, nah, I got it, when his brother jumped in? Something's fishy about this to me. I mean, maybe that's how it all happened, but it just doesn't sound right to me. I don't know. So of course I had to go see what else is going on here. I dug up about 50 newspaper articles and actually got overwhelmed at all that I found. So let's just start at the beginning. The story actually starts with his dad, Charles. Charles was born in Germany and he immigrated to America when he was about 10. He was married to Kate and they had 3 boys, Frederick, George, and William. The city directories don't start until 1882 on Ancestry for Bristol, so we see Charles F. Michael is the proprietor of a hotel called Commercial House. He's about 33 here. The boys obviously are still very young. One interesting thing that I found about this little ad though is that it mentions a billiard table. I guess I didn't realize that billiards were a thing in 1882. This 1886 ad states that there is a skating rink next door. And if you ever wondered how much it costs to stay in a hotel in 1888, here it says it's $1.50 a day to stay at the Commercial House. 35 cents will get you a good dinner. And it says there's a good livery attached. A livery is a stable where horse owners pay a weekly or a monthly fee to keep their horses. Facilities at a livery yard normally include a loose box or stable and access for the horse to graze on grass. This 1889 ad states that there's an opera house next door now. By 1893, it still has the $1.50 a day, 35-cent dinner, billiards, and livery stables, but now it says that he's the manager of the opera house next door, as well as a real estate agent and a bill poster. It seems that during the 1890s, there was an anti-saloon league that was basically like the Prohibition of the 20s, where they tried to make alcohol illegal to buy or sell. So the Commercial House was no longer able to sell liquors. They got busted on at least one occasion in 1893 for illegally selling liquors. It looks like he tried to apply for the liquor license a couple times over the next several years, being denied. By 1899, Charles is about 50 now, and his son Frederick is now 22, so Fred applied for the liquor license and he was approved. His other son William is 24 now, and he's running the opera house. This 1900 article just kind of gives us the status. Charles, the proprietor of the commercial house and the owner of the opera house. The third son, George, is a teacher in New York City at the moment. This 1900 census shows some of the people staying at the hotel at the moment. This 1903 directory shows that Charles, the dad, is farming now, and the Michael brothers are running the commercial house and the opera house. The opera house, by the way, is playing 6 attractions a month. You can rent for $25 a night. I'm guessing that's for shows, not for sleeping. Here's a photo that shows the commercial house and the opera house in 1875. I assume the hotel is the majority of the photo, and how cool would it be just to time travel, just for a couple hours, just to talk to some of these guys around town and then come home. So now we're up to 1903. Fred's about 26 now, and it says that he was arrested about a week ago for 18 counts of violation of the liquor law. Now, was there another prohibition again? I don't know. By 1904, George is back from New York City, and he's in the paper for winning a couple games of pool for money. Frederick's in trouble again in 1905, someone suing him over the sale of a cash register. In 1906, he's in trouble again. This time, him and a buddy went fishing and apparently brought some fish from Cedar Swamp, and that was in violation of some fishing law. They were later acquitted. In 1906, a liquor license has been granted to Fred and his brother George. In April 1907, some renovations are being made to the opera house, and now it's up to $2 a day to stay at the hotel. Now, as you can imagine, many newspaper articles have to do with events that happened at the hotel or the opera house. It didn't seem like there was a dull moment around there. In 1883, there was a train wreck close by to the hotel. In 1891, there was a thief caught stealing from another tenant. In 1893, a murder happened on the hotel grounds. In 1894, a dude came up to the desk asking for a bed, and he said he felt ill, and later they found him dead in his bed. In 1901, another robbery. In 1908, a cripple guy fell out of the third-story window and broke his neck. So feel free to pause any of these and read the articles. By 1908, this newspaper article refers to Frederick as former proprietor of the commercial house. It later says that Frederick filed for bankruptcy. Then we see that the saloon is closed until further notice. There's a bunch of lawsuits against him from people trying to recover goods. Later this year in 1908, the commercial house is sold. It basically says that Charles started this company, he had really good success with it, and the property is considered one of the most valuable properties in town. But when Charles retired and let Fred take over, Fred fell into bad times and went bankrupt. A few months later, we see Frederick secured about 200 acres of land for the purpose of constructing a large fish and game preserve. He's planning on making a dam and creating a pond. I think this is where he ends up dying later. The Bristol Opera House shows up in the paper December 1908 to confirm that it's under new management, and that there was a concert last night from the Victor's Venetian Band. The following year, we see that the commercial house is still running, and so is the saloon, but the Michael family is no longer associated with either one of them. In 1910, Charles, the dad, he's now 61, he came out of retirement and now he's back doing real estate. The following year, in 1911, Fred, who's 34 now, is trying to get back into the liquor business. This article doesn't say where he's working now, but the article about his drowning states that he was managing a place called the City Lunch. He applied for a liquor license again, but he was denied on the grounds that his establishment wasn't suitable, saying that there was already enough saloons in Bristol, and that he was an unsuitable person. Harsh. The following year, in 1912, he's selling the City Lunch. Then, in December 1912, the Opera House burns to the ground. The paper says that it was leased out, but it was still owned by Charles Michael. It was a total loss. 3 years after the Opera House is destroyed is when Fred drowns. I really don't see any reason for suicide or murder, but the details of his death just seem strange. By the way, his 2 brothers died within days of each other in 1955. His dad died in 1926. So, my bottle is super pristine. Still has the lightning closure, although it's rusted up pretty bad. It's really nice, blown, tooled blob top. It says Fred B. Michael, Bristol, Connecticut, registered, and this bottle must be returned when empty. I've never actually seen that much instructions on a registered bottle before, so that's pretty cool. So let's see. He started working in about 1899, but it looks like by 1903 they weren't allowed to sell liquor anymore. Then he's granted a license again in 1906, and in 1908 he's bankrupt and closed the saloon. So there's only a few years that this bottle could have been produced. I calculate no more than 6 possible years between 1899 and 1908. It's actually kind of amazing that this thing survives. And that's all I've got for today, guys. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.